Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Amirault, and I'd like to welcome you to Career Clarity and Purpose. This live event, which is also being recorded, will have 14 speakers where these experts will reveal their strategies to provide career clarity aligned with your true purpose. Many of you have been impacted by COVID. In fact, I don't know anybody who hasn't. Possibly you're part of the Great Resignation, or maybe you've been downsized, right-sized, reorged, or let go, and whatever that means. And I'm here this morning with Terry Seamon, who I've known for a number of years, primarily through his wife, actually, through some choral group work. But Terry and I have worked together several times on different aspects of career coaching and have swapped ideas through the years. And I'm really happy to have him here today. He is the president, founder of Smart Moves Coaching and guides executive teams and professionals through challenging transitions, success coach and facilitator, and also participates in a number of leadership development programs. So Terry, want to say welcome to you this morning.
Thanks, Bill.
And how are you?
I'm real good. And I want to start off by complimenting you on this event that you organized today. Kudos to you, Bill, for putting this together. It's very impressive, and I know it's going to give many people a real helping hand in this environment that we're in today.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and I know each one of the speakers at some level, or some more than others, but I also know that whatever my background is or whatever my perspective is not always the whole story, and that's why I wanted to organize this, to put it together, around the holidays, so that people could use this information, because 2023 is, as of today, 1 month around the corner, and getting to that point in the next stage of your career or life or whatever that means. This is really the time to start thinking about it. So let's go into a little bit of your background, Terry, in terms of different careers that you've had, different job situations and consulting projects, and et cetera. And what about those for you made them successful and then led you into what you're doing today?
I had a long career in the corporate world in learning and development, L&D. Some of you on the call perhaps might be L&D people. And in the learning and development field, my specialties were and continue to be leadership development, team building, organizational change, and perhaps a couple of other things related to those. But those would be the main three areas. And as Paul said in the prior hour, these are things that I have always loved. I've had a passion for them. I still do. And I still do some work in that area with corporate clients, designing customized learning programs for their managers, primarily. So I did that for a long time, from the early 80s right up until the Great Recession in 2008. When the Great Recession hit, I was in New York City working for the American Management Association, managing a portfolio of their best-selling management programs, and found myself, along with millions of others, out of work. Yeah. One day my phone rang. This is a true story. It was a colleague of mine out in San Francisco just calling to commiserate. She had heard about the downsizing at the AMA and wanted to know how I was doing. So we chatted a while. And then she popped the question. She said, would I like her to introduce me to an executive she knows in New York in an outplacement company? And I said, sure. And so she did. And I met with the executives at this company. They hired me in 2009. So since 2009 to the present moment, I have been working as a career coach. I think what they saw in me, Bill, was they saw in me, because of my L&D background, working with people to help them with their strategic learning, going through change processes, really helping people in the corporate world as a coach, an internal coach, you might say, coach and internal consultant. I think they saw in me somebody who had the required background for the kind of work that they do. And then one other thing I think sealed the deal. When I told the executive, oh, and by the way, I've been out of work 5 times in my corporate career. His eyes opened up. He said, "You've been out of work 5 times?" I said, "Yes, I've been fired, downsized, terminated, right-sized, and I've gone through outplacement twice." once with Lee Hecht Harrison, and once with, oh boy, I'm going blank on the other one. I think it was Drake Beam and Morin. I don't know
Right?
if Drake Beam still even exists, but Lee Hecht Harrison still exists.
Yes.
And so I went through those outplacement processes personally, and have conducted job searches personally. I've been there and done that. I've felt the pain. I've also
Right.
felt the joy of those processes. And so he extended his hand across the table and he said, "Terry, come on board. We need you." And
That's
so
great.
it was a really good story. Uh, Prior to that, in my corporate life, I had a number of occasions where, because of organizational changes, I got involved in helping people with that type of transition, of transitioning from, working to being on the market again,
Hmm.
helping with resumes, helping with networking, helping with these things. And so my training as a career coach really came from my life experiences as an L&D/HR person in the corporate world. Once I landed with this outplacement company, they then put me through a formal certification program. So
I
like
see.
like like Paul, it's a combination of life experience, certification, and really just bringing experiences, relevant experiences to the role that have helped me to help others.
Well, it would feel to me like that if you're a learning and development expert handling
Yep.
things on a macro level,
Yep.
moving that to the micro level is a natural progression. Is that
I,
how you would
I think,
describe it?
yeah, I think so. I really think so. For the longest time, when people ask me, "What do you do?" I always used to say, I'm a learning person. I'm a learning professional. I help people to learn strategically so that they can be more effective in their jobs and help their companies to be more successful. Then, as my career evolved, I started to modify that a little bit. I met a colleague one day at AT&T,
Hmm.
and on his desk was one of those, what do they call them, a little desk
Placards,
sign. Yeah, a
right?
little desk placard. And he was an OD guy at AT&T, and on his placard it said, and I love this, "Change guy." So I was a learning guy meeting a change guy, and I
Right.
realized, that's me too. That is the work that I've been doing. That is the training that I have received, because many of my employers sent me off to various certification programs where I learned about organizational change and became certified in various processes. So I modified my little slogan at that time and decided I'm a learning and change guy.
Well, it's funny because that has a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
The learning and change can be things that people embrace or things that people resist, and
Yeah, and
depending
or
on where
things that
they
people
are.
would, yes, things that people would rather not happen the way that they're about to happen, like losing one's position at a company due to a restructuring. But
Right.
the good news there, having been through it myself, and I think Marty talks about this, you will land, you will land. There's no doubt about it. You will land, and everybody is in transition. Whether you're looking for a job or not. Again, it's another piece of Marty's wisdom you'll get to later today.
Yes.
Everybody is in transition, and so I like to say, and this is my current mantra, my current slogan. I like to say it's a smart move. It's a smart move, especially when you're in a career transition, to make sure that you set some learning goals, like what do I need
Yes.
to learn during this transition, and also learn about change, learn about the process of change. That way, when you land in your next organization, you come into that role as a change expert. You'll be able to bring that change expertise to that role and help that new organization to navigate change more effectively.
Well, as you're saying this, if you're in a field like IT,
Yeah.
if you're not learning constantly, the technology can be replaced every, you know, 12 to 18 months, sometimes less than that.
Yep.
Different software versions that come out that you need to be conversant in, and learning is a constant.
Very true.
It's like CME in the medical community or the pharmaceutical community, making sure that you have the
Yep.
upgraded credentials so that you can provide the services that at the highest level. So you've worked with hundreds, probably thousands of clients, organizations, businesses.
Yes.
How did you support them? And in particular, you and I met for real. I guess we started really having conversations about this when at your office at the Ayers Group.
Yep.
And how do you work with people who are going through that career clarity question? And what is it that, get a couple examples if you would, and we'll go from there.
Career clarity often shows up in the work that I do, Bill, as you know. You and I have chatted about this a little bit.
Right.
And you gave some examples earlier in the first hour that I was sitting here quietly nodding to. You couldn't see me nodding, but I was nodding. Sometimes it's the individual who's done X, Y, or Z for 25 years, and that's it. They want to do something else, but they don't know exactly what that is. Or they want to continue doing what they've been doing, but they want to do it in a different way, in a different industry, in a different place. So this often comes up. Sometimes it's a reinvention where the person really wants to reinvent themselves. One of my favorite stories, since you asked for examples, is an HR executive who, before I met with her, I reviewed her resume, and I thought that she and I would be talking about her HR objective. She sat down across from me and said, "Terry, I'm done with HR." So there went all my thoughts, all the things I was going to talk about. It went right out the window, and I said, "Okay, you're done with HR. Tell me about that, and tell me about what you see for yourself in the next chapter of your career."
New sheet of paper. Yes.
Exactly. Get a sheet of paper and start taking notes. It was actually a great experience for me. I'm constantly learning. It was a great experience, I'm happy to say, for her, because we worked on this issue of career clarity over a period of time. I'm going to say over a period of a couple of months. And she then landed, and she at the time, this is a couple of years ago, she was so happy to have landed in a spot that really matched her desired future. But to get to that desired future was a process of bringing greater clarity to what she wanted to do. Some of that clarity came as a result of the one-on-ones that she and I had, but I encouraged her, get out there and have conversations with people in your network, particularly mentors, and she had a list of them. And so she scheduled meetings with mentors, career coaches that she knew, other HR people that she had worked with, and just other people in her network that would be good to talk to, who would expand her thinking, and this last part's very important, give her feedback about herself from their perspective. What do they see in her? That whole question of what do other people see in us? That is such a powerful thing. Wouldn't you say, Bill? When you hear from somebody else what they see in you, sometimes it's really surprising. Sometimes it's almost hard to accept. Sometimes when people tell you what they see in you, right?
Yeah, and I'm putting this in the chat. It's the letter I, the letter C, the letter N, and the letter U. And it's exactly what it is that you just described. And oftentimes you're blind to your own
That's right.
God-given powers. You don't realize how effective you are at certain things. You might even take them for granted. I've seen people do this on a regular basis. A guy that I know from choral group work has perfect pitch. He knew that at age 7. He thought everybody had it.
Right.
Didn't know that until he was 18, that other people didn't have it and he was unique. So what about you is unique, compelling, ownable, valuable, and affordable, and all of this stuff that you brought up. Just curious, the woman that you're speaking about, when she exited the HR field, where did she end up and where did she land and how did she do after that, if you kept track of her?
I have not kept track of her during the pandemic, so it's a couple of years since she and I spoke. But where she landed was as an executive assistant. She wanted to work directly for a senior leadership level, whether an individual or a team. She wanted to work at that level as she called it executive assistant, but it was really like an executive facilitator, someone who would facilitate that executive's calendar, their meetings, their comings and goings. And that is exactly what she wanted to do. It took her a while to figure it out and name it. It took her a while to get to the point where she could name it, describe it. But once she did, she knew what she was after. she was able to actually find it through networking. She
Mhm.
actually went out and did volunteering, which is something we recommend to our clients quite often. Spend some of
Mhm.
your transitional time in volunteer work. She went out and became a volunteer. My recollection is it was with a food bank, I think. It was with a food bank. Well, anyway, if you know anything about food banks have a tremendous network of supporters,
Yes.
businesses, business owners, people that just want to do something that's good for people in need in the
Mhm.
community. And so through her volunteering at the food bank, she met all these people that she wouldn't have met otherwise. And just chatting with them, helping them with their, contribution to the food bank. I believe it was a law firm. I believe she met some executives at a law firm, and talking with them, she realized they needed her. They needed her
Yeah.
executive
Yeah.
assistant capabilities and passion. And she basically sold herself into that role and was hired.
That's great. And it's really,
Yeah.
yeah, the two places that I come from related to this is it's something I didn't invent, but I use it liberally when I'm having conversations with clients, is a concept called ikigai, or in Sanskrit, it's called dharma, roughly translated as purpose in
Yes.
English.
Yes.
And the intersection of four circles, if you take a Venn diagram you learned in high school, it's what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And if you hit
Yep.
that bullseye, you're going to be in a great place. And a book that
Yep.
I read many years ago, and I actually have three versions of it, What Color is Your Parachute, is
Excellent.
also a really good way of helping you unearth what it is that's inside you that may have been buried, or you're off doing something because you're supporting your family or whatever it is. But the time to determine what that is could well be now, or
Yep.
it could well be have been, during COVID or whatever it might be. So
Yep.
um,
Yep.
any other examples of either individuals or even organizations that have changed and morphed themselves and provided greater clarity for their client base or their employers or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I have another story I'll tell you, but before launching into it, I also strongly endorse and frequently recommend What Colors Your Parachute. The Ikigai book, the one that I read was the blue cover by the co-authors, Morales and Garcia, I think, were the
Mhm.
co-authors. I don't have it right in front of me, so I could be off. But excellent books to have on your shelf, everybody. If you're in career transition, you those are two good ones. Bill's got a book. The prior speaker has a book on work search buddies. And
And you have a couple as well, too.
when Paul held his up, I said, "Do I have a copy of mine?" I
Yeah,
went over
right.
on the bookshelf, and there it is.
Yep.
To your success, published in 2012. I'm going to rewrite it and republish it. So if you want, just wait a while. Sometime in 2023, the new and improved and expanded version of this is coming. Uh, but yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of businesses were hit hard and many closed.
Hmm.
Restaurants, for example, right?
Oh, sure.
My brother George has been in business for many years as a produce provider, fresh produce provider to restaurants here in New Jersey. And all of a sudden, his clients, restaurants, were closing up because
Hmm.
they couldn't stay in business with the virus going around and people afraid to leave their homes. So all of a sudden, his business went away, and he needed to provide for his family
Sure.
um, and his children who are in their 30s. They came to him and they said, "Dad, you got to reinvent." And he said, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And they said, "You should deliver produce to people's doorsteps,
Hmm.
sort of a contactless delivery of fresh produce to people at their homes, people who are afraid to go to the supermarket because of the virus. This could be something." And he said, let's go for it.
Hmm.
I wrote about this on my LinkedIn blog, so there's an article there. Anybody
Okay.
wants to go read it, with a photo of my brother George sitting on the produce dock over at Hunts Point Market in the Bronx.
right?
So he reinvented literally overnight his business from restaurants to residential contactless delivery, with the help of his kids who are super marketing savvy, internet savvy. He rolled out a whole new business and it went through the roof.
Not surprised.
It
Yeah.
went through the roof. And it's only now, like maybe I think a month ago, he has shut it down because restaurants are back
So he morphed out and then morphed back
and more
into
back.
what his main business is. And as you're saying this, a woman that I met who's from northern New Jersey, met her back in May on a TV show that's now appearing called America's Real Deal.
Yep.
But her story is this: she was a licensed esthetician working for one of the main firms that had retail stores. Of course, during COVID, they all went to nothing. And she was going through a divorce, had a 9-year-old daughter. Her daughter's now 12. And she said to her daughter, listen, mommy has to go work. This is what I need to do.
Mhm.
And she packed her tables and all her equipment and all the tools and everything else into her car. And she would go home to home with her mask on,
Is that right?
doing
Wow.
the same thing. And it gets better. Her father is a used car, sports car renovation enthusiast. So they bought a used van and they outfitted it to have an esthetician's table and all of the accoutrements that go along with it
That is
inside the
great.
van.
That's great.
And it took him 3 months to do it. And of course, she was with him in all the design and everything. She got the van together. Her business went through the roof because she could then service 5, 6, 7 people in one place. They would all go to a neighbor's house and do that. So she has since made a business out of it. And now she's in the process of determining whether she wants to franchise it or expand it in whatever way. A tremendous story out of
That
what could have been a disaster. I mean,
right.
if like the first thing that went, I didn't get a haircut for like 5 months during COVID. There's the first thing that went was anything related to beauty.
Yeah.
But her story is terrific. It's called Glam Truck Warriors, and you can look her up.
Glam Truck Warriors.
Yes.
Wow.
And she's her name is Tanya Torres. And she'll be happy that I'm talking about her in this forum. But she's up in Bergen County. But she will travel into Hudson, Essex, Passaic as necessary. And it's like she's a delivery truck, only delivering esthetician services, not produce.
Have you written up that story, Bill? Published it anywhere?
Have not. I will post that on LinkedIn. I need to get her
You-
permission, obviously. But yeah, I mean and the real thing about it is that her income went from whatever it was that she was working at as an employee to it's now 4 or 5 times what that is or what that was during the worst possible time. So she took lemons and made lots and lots of lemonade out of them as well.
Indeed. Wow. Great story.
Yeah, and I told her, I said, I may never use your services, but I'll use your story. Because
Right.
We'll go from there. So any specific, we've talked about a few things related to this, but any recommendations specifically from a process standpoint that you would have for people? And I've worked with people as young as recently out of college that not sure what they want to do, or we've already talked to, the 20-year veteran who says, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore, the human resources woman that you mentioned before. From a process standpoint, how do you go about it and what do you recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in using powerful questions. You mentioned some earlier that are really excellent. What's a powerful question? A powerful question is a coaching technique where you ask the person a question that really gets them to go deep, really explore who they are, what they're all about. And then they take a deep dive and they come back up with some jewels, some gems, about themselves. And so I like to ask questions like, what are you really good at? Right? What do you think you're really good at? What have others come to you for because they see you as the go-to person? What have others gone to you for because you are the go-to person for them? Right. When they think of X, they go to Bill Amirault. When they think of X, they go to Gary Levy, who I'm seeing on the screen here. Sorry, Gary.
Yes.
Gary, don't mean to pick on you. So that's the go-to question. What do you really love to do?
Mhm.
What really, when you do certain things, you feel great, you feel alive, you feel, like you don't even sense the passage of time.
Right.
What do you really love to do? So these are questions that I don't like throw them all at the person all at once. Each one needs time.
Mhm.
Each one needs time. You gotta take that one question, dive in, go deep, see what you find, and then bring that back up. So what are you really good at? Make a little list of those things that you're really good at.
Mhm.
Then do the external question. What have other people come to you for because you are the go-to person in their eyes? Make a little list of those things. And
Right.
then what do you really, what do you do? What are some of the things that you do where you feel most alive, most energized, and don't even notice time when you're immersed in those things? But
Mhm.
those, and there are a few others that are favorites of mine. Uh, when you go through that process of using powerful questions like that to go deep and see what is inside of you and bring it out into the open and write it down and examine it, obviously yourself, but then even ideally with another person, with a coach, if you've got access to a coach,
Right.
with a work search buddy, Paul Sakala.
Right.
Could be a work search buddy exercise, or it could be part of what you do in a small accountability team. You and Paul touched on accountability teams in your hour. I'm a big proponent of such teams. The key thing, though, is keep it small, just a small team, 2, 3, 4 people. And this could be something that the team actually does as an exercise together, that they actually go through this process together. Maybe 1 week, it's the what are you good at question. When they meet the next week, it's the what do people come to you for question. And maybe the next week, it's the what brings you most alive. And then just keep going with those questions. The book, What Colors Your Parachute, is helpful here. The Ikigai book is very helpful here.
Mhm.
Many of these tools will really help you to get the questions you need to go inside and bring out into the open what you are all about. And when you bring these answers out into the open, you very often get clarity, our topic for today,
Right.
around your purpose, your passion. Bill, you talked about that sweet spot in the middle of the Venn diagram of the
Right.
Ikigai concept. It's this type of process of asking these powerful questions and going inside for the answers that will get you to that sweet spot, I believe. And I've seen it happen for myself. I've gone through this process myself
Mhm.
several times over the years. um, a colleague of ours out in the Midwest, Kathy McCafferty Smith, her workbook is designed to do just that. It's full of questions and little exercises designed to get you closer and closer and closer to that sweet spot that is so unique for you as an individual person.
Well, you brought up a couple things that are meaningful to everybody who's going to be on these calls today, which is working with a coach.
Yeah,
And the coach isn't always there for the answers, but the coach is definitely there, like you said, for the questions.
yeah,
And I always I come to my clients and I say, look, there are no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but the only answer that matters is the honest answer. And
exactly.
I'm never going to tell somebody what to do unless they tell me they're going to rob a bank, and then I'm going to advise against it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the questions that provide the impetus to get the answers that people hadn't even thought of in one way or another before.
Yeah, yeah.
So, fair,
Yep.
fair.
Yes, the questions are the process. The questions
Yeah.
are the process. And back in my total quality management days, I'm dating myself. I know I used to have
Okay.
hair in those. I had hair in those days. We used to say, trust the process.
Yes.
Trust the process, folks. Don't doubt the process. The process works. Follow it.
Hmm.
Follow it. Trust it. And what comes at the end is your next job.
That and when I find that people are somehow resisting the process.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll say, well, where did this show up in your last two jobs? You're resisting me on this, or this. And I'm saying, like you say, Terry, trust the process, which is still a very active phrase in my vocabulary these days as well. Um, where is that resistance coming from, and how is it hindering you from getting to where you really want to be?
Yeah. Sometimes I've seen it, particularly with executives who think that they know it all, and
Mm,
they're very smart. I mean, they wouldn't get to become executives if they weren't smart. But I think that sometimes they're so smart, maybe too smart, that they close themselves off to input. And I know from firsthand experience how well these processes work if
mhm.
you trust them and work at them. And so getting through that resistance, that brick wall is not possible. Sometimes it is just not possible.
Well, the other part that comes up, when what you just described happens is, what information that you need to know are you missing because you're resistant to hearing it?
Yeah.
And
Exactly. I'm with you.
and people are not trying to cut you out at the knees. They're trying to bring your attention to something that may not be working so that it can be addressed, because if
Yeah.
it lingers, it's going to turn into something worse than it may already be at this time.
Yep. So what I
And
what I do sometimes is I'll try to provide another point of view. Maybe I'll send that individual an article to read, or I'll send them a link to a video like a TED talk or something, where in that article or in that video, there's somebody else saying what I'm saying, and and then they come back to me and they go, Harry, I got this great idea that I picked up in this video. That's what I was saying, but they wouldn't listen to me. But now they listen because they just heard some professor on a TED talk about the same thing.
it sounds like parenting at some level.
Yes.
And
I think
that, exactly. It's, again, what is it that needs to happen with you, with this project, with the approach, whatever it is that's going to make it better? And another plug for those who are going to be on these interviews all day today is, working with a career coach can be not just a confidence builder, not just a value position or value proposition builder. It can also be a huge financial savings as well, because let's just say you're working in a position that's worth six figures a year, which is roughly 2 grand a week, $400 a day. So you work with a career coach who gets you back to work a week, 2, 3 weeks sooner than you would have on your own at a level that you're really worth. The investment is totally worth it.
there's a
And
blog there's a blog post right there, Bill. Right,
yeah, yeah,
write that one.
yeah, that's it.
I
It's a
know.
it's a page in my book. It's a full page in
There,
the front section of my
great,
book. So
great. Oh, let me
you know,
tell you the secret to writing a book, at least the secret that helped me. I don't know if it works for others. I write blog posts on specific things that are occurring to me that are in my brain. I got to get them out. And then I gather up the 20, 30 blog posts that all are on a certain theme,
mhm,
and they become a book.
there you go. Yeah, there you
So,
go.
so
Well, as you
that's what I recommend.
well, and your blog posts or your LinkedIn posts, I have noted, contain acronyms that you can memorize, and
Yeah.
then and I said, okay, this is pretty good. I mean, in terms of putting the first letter so that the 5 or 7 letters then become a word that you can remember, and then all the other points that go along with it. And how many of those have you published through the years, would you say?
Tons.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think when I started doing it on LinkedIn, uh, back a few years ago, I'm now up to 400 some blog posts, but I started blogging in 2004. So
Hmm.
the actual number is much higher. Um, if you went back to my blog before LinkedIn. But yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I've always been, one of your questions you sent me in advance was, how did this all begin with me way back when?
Right.
As a child, I was a writer. I drew my own comic strips.
Oh.
I had my own superhero characters. I wrote poetry later on, short stories. So
Hmm.
originally my career goal was to be a journalist, and so I studied journalism in college.
Hmm.
And so a theme my entire life has been writing, and so I still write. I write uh, compulsively. I can't help myself. I'm always thinking of the next article. What's the next blog post I'm going to put on LinkedIn? So inside of me there is a writer, and then on top of that writer is the learning and change guy. And on top of that is the career coach. So those are the layers of me. If I were to say, what are the layers in my personal layer cake? Wow, I
So
got to
you,
write about that.
well, yeah, there you go. So you have to have a pen and some kind of pad of paper next to your bed because you wake up in the middle of the night and something's hitting you and you have to at least jot something down. There it is. Okay.
Right here, right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, one of the things that mentioned in the first hour, but want to also mention with you is people who
Yep.
are transitioning out of, productive career roles into retirement. Is
Yep.
that something that you've worked at?
Oh yeah.
And how do you go through that? And
Yeah.
there's some other comments from before that we may bring up, but go ahead.
Yeah. During the pandemic, I had a client who had been, let go by his employer after a very long, successful, accomplishment-filled career. I mean, I was shocked that this company let this guy go, but they did,
Mhm.
Along with a bunch of others. And he just had such a story to tell. We would have our phone calls, and I would just listen to him regale me with stories of his accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him at one point, let's call him Ted. Ted, so what are you going to do next, man? Are you going to retire? Are you going to keep working? And he was torn. He was torn between retiring and continuing to work. And
Mm-hmm.
so we went to work together on both of those possible pathways.
Mm-hmm.
What if he were to retire, what would that be all about? If he were to go back to work, under what terms and doing what sort of thing would he go back to work? The end of that story is he went back to work at, get ready for this, 75 years old.
Wow.
He
Okay.
went back to work. So he's, as far as I know, he's still working.
Wow.
I haven't spoken with him since last year, so I need to send him a note. But on the retirement possibility, he and I worked on the following, and this is maybe a little bit different, I think, from what you and Paul were talking about, or maybe it's consistent. And I made some notes here. We talked about identifying his interests. What's
Yes.
the interest today? And,
Mm-hmm.
and his list included things like photography, travel, wine. He had a whole list. I mean, it just flowed right out when I said, Bill, what are your interests? Or Ted, what are your interests? And he had a whole bunch of interests.
Right.
So when he is ready to stop working, which I mean, he's a ball of fire, this guy. When he's ready to stop, the working thing and slow down a bit and truly retire, he has a whole list. It's ready. We wrote it down. He's got it in his email somewhere of all the interests he has that would fill his days. It would fill his days, fill his time. He would never be bored. He
Right.
would have something to do. And so I think one of the tips I would give to anybody who's thinking about retirement is think about what your interests are, identify them, make a list of your interests. It could be family related things, could be travel, could be a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Ted had a hobby of photography. Someone else might have another hobby. What part-time work might you do in retirement so that you perhaps stay busy with some sort of a job? A friend of mine retired from a well-known New Jersey-based pharmaceutical company. I won't say
Mm-hmm.
their name, but everybody knows this name. And he was there for many years, had a very, very successful corporate career with them. He finally retired. He was sort of invited by the employer to retire. So
Right.
he retired. He is the happiest camper I know in retirement. He is so happy. This guy's amazing. He spends his time doing family related things, hobby thing. He loves to cook. He's an amateur chef. And if you ever had a meal at his home, you would think you were, at Jacques Pepin's kitchen or
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
It's really, really good. He is keeping active with some part-time work.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's not paid work, but he is a literacy volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
He is active at his church in a church-related, community-oriented ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at this guy, he is the model of retirement.
That's great.
The model of retirement. So whenever I have a client who's thinking about retirement, I always think, okay, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to learn a lot, and I'm going to start with interests. You know, what are your interests? If somebody were to say to me, oh, I don't know, I don't have any interest, I think we'd have a problem. But we have to figure out how to start there. And I'd probably go back to my powerful questions, and I would say, you know, well, what kind of things do you do where you feel the most sense of energy, aliveness, and joy? And let's make a list of those and see if some of those might translate into retirement.
100%. You know, many of my colleagues, peers, friends who are also on the back nine of life are either considering or already have retired. And the one criteria that I've found to be the best representation of it is this: when you have enough and when you have had enough. And that combination is the impetus to have the conversation that you're describing, which is to, you know, expand the time that you allocate to your real interests, hobbies, passions, in whatever way that means.
Yep,
So
yep.
great. So
Okay.
let me see if there are any other questions in the chat. And there are several folks who have posted their contact information there, which is all great. Just to put it out there, all of the recordings today will be available in a package along with a copy of my ebook called Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career, and also a 30-minute consultation, a career consultation as part of it. It's a VIP package that you saw in your invitation. And Terry, obviously, this recording will be part of that as well. Any other closing thoughts that you might have on this, all, you know, with all your experience and from learning and development through outplacement, through career coaching and organizational development, that kind of thing? Any other final comments you'd want to put out there for the audience?
Yes, I want to tell a closing story.
Okay.
I call it the Pixley formula. Pixley is Pixley.
Mm-hmm.
When the Great Recession occurred in 2008, a man named Charles Pixley was a finance guy working on Wall Street, who, along with millions of others, found himself out of work. He decided to turn his resume into a sandwich board that he would hang on his shoulders. There'd be a big panel in the front and a big panel in the back. And he hand wrote out on these panels information about himself in color. You can look this up on Google and see pictures of him. And he put on his three-piece suit, his wingtip shoes, and he went to the corner of Wall Street and Broadway every morning as people who were still working were going back and forth to their offices with the sandwich board on.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually landed a job. But before landing the job, he landed the interest of the media. This is how I heard about it.
Yes.
And there was an article written about him in one of the New York papers. And I read the article, and it inspired me to this day. The interviewer asked him, Mr. Pixley, millions have been affected by this recession. What would you recommend to them? And without missing a beat, he said the following. He said, you got to believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put yourself out there, and you have to improve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the Pixley formula. I've written about it. I encourage you to look him up. You'll actually see Google photos of him with the sandwich board on. And it, to me, it's a source of inspiration that never ends. Believe in yourself, put yourself out there. Now we have LinkedIn. So use LinkedIn to put yourself out there, folks. So believe in yourself, put yourself out there and improve yourself. Never stop improving yourself.
100%. Terry, I just want to thank you for your time, your insights, your expertise this morning. Always great to speak with you, and glad that we've had a couple dozen, well, 3 dozen other people who are part of this. So I'm going to stop the recording here, but again, thank you very much for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks. Real honored being here.